we'll throw it right back at you. I guess we have our two dignitaries in the audience here this evening. Welcome. Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate that. We'll recognize you in a minute and come up and bestow some great honor upon you, perhaps. Oh, well, there goes our night. Well, all things considered, I hope we don't have a long meeting tonight. I have a movie I have to go to in 2 hours.
In 2 hours?
In 2 hours.
Yes. I've been waiting a year for this to come out, so.
So is my family.
My kids are at home right now going, Dad, let's go. So, okay. This is the Kaysville City Planning Commission meeting of April 25th, 2019. Agenda item number 1, we need to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 11th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of, where is it on my thing? April 11th, 2019.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, agenda item number 2, a conditional use permit for major home occupation B, massage therapy at 1030 East Bedford Drive for Elizabeth.
So she just got a dedicated room all set up for it. She works, her work hours are going to be from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays, and then Saturdays she'll have a few appointments in the mornings. She seemed like she had ample parking for people in her driveway. She's got a big driveway and plenty of frontage for her street, so I see no parking issues. And I guess staff recommends we approve that with no conditions.
Thank you, Dan. Much easier the second time, isn't it? When
Yeah, I
there's
thought
no
I'd
big
just
crowd
tell
here?
a story rather than try to.
That's all right. We appreciate you. All right. Is the applicant here this evening?
No, she happens to be at a massage conference. And I don't know.
Any guinea pigs?
Yeah. I'm all for that. All right. Any discussion or questions? If not, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit for major home occupation massage therapy for Elizabeth Minera? Okay, at 1030 East Bedford Drive.
I'll second.
Tamara?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, the next item, a conditional use sign for Freedom LED Signs, Braxton Shank at 2025 West and 200 North.
Is that me? All right, we got a sign. It's down on the bottom of 2nd North. It is 2025 West, 200 North. We looked at their cabinet size, the sign size, and everything. It meets all the zoning requirements and all the sign requirements. Right there's a picture of what it's going to be. It's going to have a LED screen at the top. Those are they're kind of that fogged in white plexiglass for vinyl logos. They're going to use brick, and they're going to use siding that matches the building, so it's all going to tie in and look good with the buildings. I went down and looked at the placement of it. It meets all the setbacks, what they've got drawn there for their site plan. The driveways if the property develops to the east of it, they're far enough away from the driveway, it shouldn't cause any problems. There's far enough from the other driveway to the west of it, which is their property's driveway. I see no issues with traffic or anything. I think it should be okay for that. They're using the state-of-the-art sign, same one we're using for our city, same one they're using for Mountain or what's it called? Mountain America Credit Union. It's got all the controls. It dams it. They can do all kinds of things with it, so it's not intrusive to the people or things. And what else? I think that's pretty much my spiel. I recommend that we sign with no conditions.
Thank you. Discussion, questions? Is the applicant here this evening?
He happens to be in a
Massage therapy?
massage
conference meeting?
therapy no, he is actually in Vegas at a sign conference. I think Vegas is mopping up this weekend. And that's the truth. I can get him on the phone if we have to.
I think that's all right. Just wondered if they were here this evening.
You know, a couple comments I have on it. As you remember, when we had the public hearings on on both the original proposal that was ultimately withdrawn, and then when they came back, one of the comments, a very frequent comment that we got, and I've noticed it too because I live right down in that area, is the building right now, it has just, in a lot of people's opinion, an excessive amount of lighting on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bordered with the tall linear type light fixtures, and that was brought up on several occasions that was already distractive. I've noticed that they come on probably about time sun starts to go down, but they are turning off, so they aren't staying on at night anymore like they used to be. They used to just light up that whole area. And I know we did get one email, at least I did.
Yeah.
A little bit concerned about the signage. Personally, it's a pretty big sign and pretty, I think personally, a little bit of an overkill for that area, but some of the things that I'd like to see with it is that we put some restrictions on the time that it can actually be illuminated and lit, and also you know, the frequency of the changing, or you know, how message board and the graphics maybe displays or rotates through. I'm not sure what their intent is. I mean, you showed some of that, some of it's plexiglass, but then some of it is an actual board, a display board. Did they talk about that at all?
Yes, I have some notes here. They had, from initially when they put their building in, they got a complaint about their field lighting too. And he says they have reduced the actual lighting on the building since they've installed that.
And like I said, I've noticed they have done that.
And he
That's
said too,
good.
they want to be good neighbors. They'll try everything they can to. They do have are installing has a dimmer switch that, as the lights, like the dusk, the sun goes down, it automatically dims with the sky, so they can dim it down up to, you know, whatever they need to make it agreeable with everybody. And he has made some concessions if we need to do sign limits and stuff, because or time limits, because the people that own the building want everybody to go there for their medical. They just want to be good neighbors, and they'll do whatever we need to do to make it work for everybody, he told me.
Yeah, and he actually he seems like a genuinely wants to be a good neighbor, and I know that they've got a good business there.
I do have some specifics here for what he agreed to. He said they can shut it down from 10 to 6, if that'll help. And it reduces 75% as the sun goes down. So from the time the sun goes down till 10 o'clock, it'll be at like 25% lighting capacity. And I think that's where we was.
So that's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
Yes. Set it to whatever, so it'll just.
Yeah, I know we've had, with some of the other signs that we've done like this, we've put some of those same restrictions on it, and it seems like some of them we've actually done a little bit earlier, depending, you know, we go seasonal. During the winter, it gets darker a lot sooner, and summer we have extended light, you know, the hours. Anybody remember what hours we've put on some of the others? You recall any of them, Lyle?
I'm trying to think back. It's not too frequently that we deal with these. 9 or 10 o'clock is probably ballpark what we've seen on some of the other locations, but I couldn't quote you a specific on the different signs.
Because personally, my kids aren't in school, and it stays light a lot longer during the winter, especially with a lot of the residential across the street and around, and during the school year too, when they're trying to put kids down. Personally, I'd like to see it earlier than that. I'd like to see it, probably like 9 o'clock.
At what time?
My recommendation would be 9 o'clock. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I just think with directly across the street.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are there 3 areas that are moving at different times?
Yeah, so since I got the laser pointer, maybe.
So the bottom 2 will...
They're static. They're just fixed cabinets, so they won't
so
move.
It's just the top.
So that larger image with the baby on this particular picture is the moving screen.
Is this perpendicular to the road or parallel with the road? And if it's perpendicular, is it two-sided?
Yeah,
what I'm
it
assuming.
would be double-sided.
Okay.
Lyle, I have a question. Is there a standard lighting wattage sort of limitation, in terms of how bright they can start out?
We talked about that a little bit when we were looking at the ordinance. Some cities do have a lumens requirement to monitor that.
Okay.
And so we kind of more went with the observational nuisance. If it is too bright, and then we would ask them to dim it, but ensure that these signs have to have the capability to be dimmed.
Okay.
I do kind of like your thought of 9 p.m. I'm just,
Are you saying 9 p.m. Across the board the whole year, or 9 p.m. sometimes, 10 p.m. other times? Is that what you're saying?
I would just say set it at 9 p.m. I'm just thinking if this is my backyard and I'm looking out the window, not that I'm not really concerned about the lighting as much as I am. There's a TV
The
going
hours.
off and it's just distracting. Even your screen going off, I think it has a tendency to distract more than a light. I mean, if you have a street light outside your house, you just sort of get used to it after a while, and it's there. But when it's constantly changing and flashing,
Yeah.
that does become annoying. And I realize it's not hundreds of people it's affecting, but I think we do have to consider the one that it does affect.
Well, I think it's consistent with what we've done before too.
I think you're right.
What I
Go
might recommend,
daylight
and
saving.
excuse me,
No,
please, I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, what I might recommend is, in our conversation with the applicant, and I don't know that they're not amenable to that, and I don't mean to sound like it's a disagreement, but what I've mentioned to them is in our cutoff, anything outside of that may be worth tabling it and having them come back to have that discussion, and very well 9 o'clock may be the exact number, but make sure they're on board with that, and they could speak to, I think, the other portions of Commissioner Bullock's comments of what type of, if it's continuous animation or if they're just flipping images, if we want to talk maybe more specifically about the transition timing, we may need them to come back on some of those items.
That'd be
Would be
bad.
something to consider. And they're welcome, they're amenable to doing that.
Yeah, that might be a good suggestion too, get them come back.
I would even say at 9 o'clock if you can simply freeze the image.
Yeah, and
To
then
me, it's the
too.
changing image that would be distracting and disturbing. 9 o'clock, the image just freezes, come to weak air, and leave that all night. I wouldn't really, I don't think I would be concerned. It's the change that would distract me personally.
That's a good idea.
I don't know if
I
we do
think I would, personally, I would be comfortable approving it with 2 conditions. One, that it dims 75% as they said it already would. And then 2, I say 10, I'm fine with 10 to 6, but if we wanted to go 9 to 6, I suppose I could agree with that. And then, whatever other by the code, I don't know that there is that apply to this, to be honest, but those are only the only conditions I think are needed, and even the changing of the message or the blinking lights or whatever that we're concerned about, I think is number 1 already addressed in the code, and number 2 isn't a concern in the middle of the day to me personally.
Right.
So with those 2 conditions I'm talking about, I would be comfortable approving it now, but
Yeah, I'm not concerned about during the daytime either. And I'm sure we've done like 9 o'clock.
You very well could be correct. I'm
But,
just,
You know, because but you're right, if we're going to impose a condition that's contrary to what they've
you know,
told
speaking with them, they said 10 o'clock, certainly we'll do that if necessary. Outside of that, it might just be worth talking to them if you feel strongly about that. I think it's appropriate if you'd like to do that. And they are on notice that if we need to come back where they weren't able to attend tonight, that they're willing to do that.
Well, I mean, do we do we think that if we table this and they come back and they give some rousing speech for 10 o'clock, are we going to give them 10 o'clock? Probably not.
That's not going to change my mind.
Right. So,
Right.
so I don't know that we need to come back.
And I can't imagine that extra hours, they're going to come back and say, well, we're not going to do the sign then.
Right.
Because they're still going to, we're not changing the design of the sign or the size of it or anything of that. It's all allowable per the code, and all we're doing is taking an hour off to try to be considerate of the surrounding neighborhood.
And I think for them, should they have some concerns with the decision made this evening, they could apply to have that amended and come back and have that discussion and see if they have that rousing speech that makes you change your mind. So,
Yeah.
Lyle, can I ask you real quickly, the triangle to the north, what is the plan for that? Is there a plan for that?
it's zone general commercial and has been for some time. What it's planned, I've not seen any development proposals on it yet.
Because honestly, Mayor,
Right.
who
Great
really,
big old
who really
sign.
cares whether there's a blinking sign across the street?
Yeah.
Yeah, the home and the triangle piece on the corner are all part of the general commercial district.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I suppose if we're trying to be generous, all those lots and homes up there on the northeast corner,
That was my
once they
concern.
come in, they could see it probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that ever does become, whatever goes on that corner, that commercial piece, if we allow something bigger, we can always come back and say, we'll extend your hours if that were the case, but they got the ability to do it, so I'm comfortable getting, that it shuts down at night or it dims down and that it's only illuminated.
Do you want to mold that into a?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Go back to it. Okay, I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for an electronic message center sign from Freedom LED Signs, Braxton. How do you say that last name?
Shank.
Shank.
25 West, 200 North, has presented tonight with the two conditions of hours of 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then it also has dims, as discussed, with that ability to dim down to 75% based on the
Ambient light.
the ambient light. Okay.
Dim down to 25%. It goes down 75%.
Yeah, it goes down 75% to
Yeah.
25%. So, does that make sense?
Yes. Do we
I'll
have a
second that.
Gary?
Aye.
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 I,
Thank you. All right, the next item. We have a public hearing for the rezone of 0.91 acres from residential agriculture to single-family residential R120 zoning district for D. Reed Nelson. So at this time, we would like to open the public hearing and invite any of our honored guests to approach the podium and speak your mind.
I'm Reed. Do you want me to say something? Or?
We'll maybe bring you up in a minute, Reed. We'll give everyone else the opportunity to tell us good and bad things about you.
We're just here to defend you
Okay,
in case someone attacks you.
okay.
How to control though.
That's right. Well, if there's no one but Reed willing to talk, we'll close the public hearing. And Dan or Lyle, you want to give us a rundown?
Yeah, just a brief introduction to it and then a couple details on it. So the property, you can see on the map, right off of Burton Lane, which is just shy of an acre. Currently is an RA, which is a true half-acre zone per lot. I believe, and the applicant can speak to it, they're interested in potentially dividing it to create an extra lot behind the home, and thus the request for the rezone to accommodate that. And so, as you can see, some of it not too far away. And then RA is the immediate surrounding zoning districts with some agricultural property still to the north. The general plan states that west of I-15 you'd have roughly 2 unit per acre housing development, again with additional density along major streets. Burton Lane qualifies as major streets and is designated as such in our major street plan. The primary difference between the RA and the R120 that's being requested, the RA does have a few more animal rights that much of it's the same, but someone in an R1 district comes to visit you more frequently if they want a horse or something. And then the lot size. So an RA, 21,780 square feet is a half acre. R120, 20,000 square feet. So roughly 1,700 square feet difference in your potential lot size. So it's very similar. Again, just looking to shave it down just enough to create an additional lot. One note on this one is, since we've sent the noticing and as we've been reviewing it, we've got the details of kind of the lot area and size. It's extremely close to being a true 40,000 square feet. As I put in the numbers and put it in, I'm maybe about 200 square feet short. A survey 1 foot on one of those 300-foot long property line, right? Sometimes they do have that space. So subsequent steps through a subdivision, we may find that that's there and that's the case and everything meets. One item that I'd like to throw out is just an idea. If the Planning Commission is open to the idea of accommodating the use that they're proposing to get the additional lot, an R114 zone may be necessary to accommodate that. There's not enough acreage to do 3 lots, but that would then allow them to do clearly 2 lots based on the total square footage that they have. So I think it'd be a pretty safe bet if that were, again, necessary, the will. So I think the discussion, again, at large, making sure that's what the applicant's hoping to do is that the right thing? Do we want to allow them to create the additional home or additional building lot? And if so, we can ensure or talk a little bit more about the right steps to get there, and I'd be happy to provide even additional details. So I'll conclude my comments with that and be happy to take questions.
I had a question. The lot size didn't bother me, the frontage didn't bother me. Do we also need to recommend approval of the PRUD?
Yeah, that's a great question. So assuming as we've gone through this, it is a flag lot style split that will happen, you're absolutely come with it. We can do that at the time of the subdivision review. What I've talked to the city attorney about on this particular instance, where we're trying to accomplish the same thing, we're talking about creating the exact same lot, whether we color it purple or blue on the map, call it an R114 or R120. Does that matter? He said that we would potentially need to renotice it as an R114. We could include the PRUD at that time to ensure they have all the steps in place to accommodate the proposed development, and then move that forward to the council at that time for the final decision. So I would recommend, and I think it'd be good for Mr. Nelson and this evening, that we like what he's proposing or doing, or otherwise, if that's the vote. And then, unfortunately, it does delay things slightly, but we can get it back certainly through the appropriate steps with everything that's necessary to accommodate the specifics that they're hoping for. So I think that might be more of the discussion this evening is, are we okay with the flag lot?
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I'm just curious as to how they would access it. I guess they would take out those trees on the side and...
Do we want to have the applicant maybe come up, introduce yourself, and we can maybe ask you some of...
I'm Reed Nelson, my wife Beverly. We own the property. We've been living there since, I'm not going to tell you, then you'll know how old I am. Since 1980, I believe. Anyway, Commission and staff, I appreciate this opportunity. We've lived, like I said, we've lived in Kaysville all this time. We've loved Kaysville. We raised 5 sons on that piece of property. It's been beneficial to us and to them. We're emptying other places, and so it's gotten to the point where it's just more than what we want to handle, and we can't find a better place, so we want to stay there, but get rid of some of the property so we don't have to take care of it. I've been raising cattle on it ever since we bought the property, so I'll do away with that, and then plant one house behind us. Now, I didn't understand or didn't hear clearly the discussion with respect to R120, R114. Now, I think there's a question possibly about how much property there really is there, and this is something that we, I don't care which zone it is. Either way, we'll be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. However, the only issue I have is that particularly one neighbor said she would go along with an R120, but she would not go along with R114. So, I mean, if you ignore her, and you overrule that, then fine, I don't have a problem. But I just wanted to make that one issue clear. If you have any questions, answer them.
Tamara, did you have a question?
Oh, my
specifically
question was
for-
just, where would the flag lot start? I guess, are those trees on the other side? Which side is it? It's the
West
west
side?
side?
Those trees have been removed.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there were
Yeah,
poles or what.
they would not be part of that staff, of what they call a staff for the
So
flag
that's where the
anyway.
road would go?
Yeah,
Okay,
but they were removed last year because they were dying, and we were afraid of falling on our house, or even worse, the neighbor's house.
okay.
So then,
And-
oh, go ahead.
Oh, so I was just
Sorry.
wondering, what's that white building? Would that stay, or what?
No, that would have to come
Yeah,
out.
okay,
It is where we store our trailer in it,
Mm-hmm.
and a workshop, but that would have to be removed, and we understand that, and, you know, that's part of our decision of going this way, that would have to be removed.
okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
I was going to say, so with farm animals, you're not, because with the R120, it would be by conditional use, and you're only allowed so much, so you're not going to be doing any more farm animal. You've had your time.
No, I mean, that's the whole issue. I've got to cut back on what I do.
Ah. All right.
Or cut.
Okay,
Me, I'd rather do an R120 than R114, if we could.
Lyle, I don't know if you have a copy of the pictures. I don't know, do we want to even go into that at this point?
Yeah, so you're welcome to talk about it. Are these the photos or images you're
Do
looking
you
for?
have the one that has the topic, or the,
This one shows the right-of-way within the subdivision plat is,
no, the colored one with, I have it, but I just didn't grab it when I came home.
so this one shows the road, and you can see some of the right-of-way,
Yeah,
how far
okay.
back it cuts.
Yeah, and that's where one of the issues is. The curb and gutter is very clear. You can see where it's there. But the GIS, is that what it referred to?
Yeah, our mapping system.
It's, as you can see, it's positioned someplace else. So we have a difference there that needs to be ironed out.
okay.
Well, and I don't want to get into all of that right now. It's something that I recognize, and the staff recognize, that it has to be addressed, or at least it should be, before we move any further with
Okay.
respect to subdividing.
And so that's the area that you're talking about then,
Right.
Lyle?
Yeah, and
Just
so,
keep it short.
and Mr. Nelson could speak more to this, but perhaps they had more land in the past, and then as the street expanded or was pushed through at some point, land was dedicated, probably shaved away a little bit of the acreage. Whether or not the surveys, everything are as they should be, and everyone has the right amount of square footage. What I fear a little bit is, we're 39,820 square feet is my calculation on his property, so it's 180 square feet shy. So
Yeah.
you're splitting hairs based on my calculation. So a survey could turn up and show that it's there. It could be that there's a property line agreement of sorts where part of the right-of-way is given back. However, if it is part of the right-of-way, it would have to go through a street vacation process, which could be a little bit lengthy. So the sure thing, if we like the idea, is the R114 with the PRED, and we just set that up. The R120 may all just come out clean once that detail is worked
Well,
through.
with the R114, can we put a condition that no more than 2 structures?
You could, yes. Yeah, you could limit it. He'll be shy square footage anyway, but in theory, if that
Yeah.
So that would
expands
work.
or something,
And that way,
it may be helpful to have
would
that.
work.
Whatever.
Well, the way it sounds in R114, you're thinking, yeah, you might be able to do 3 homes.
Oh, no.
But-
Is that
but
what-
that
That's
wouldn't-
what I mean, is that
No,
what you're?
there's, you wouldn't have
Yeah.
sufficient
Yeah.
room for two staffs, as they're
Yeah.
referred to in the ordinance. So, no, there's no intention at all. And you can quote me on that. No intentions of putting more than one additional.
Yeah.
So I think that'd work.
Single
If we
dwelling.
do
No.
an R14 or an R20, one house would go there.
Yeah, so he needs at least 42,000 square feet of property based on acreage to get a third house under an R114. So he doesn't have
so
enough
he doesn't have the
acreage.
ability
So it's not
anyway.
even
And
possible.
then as he's referencing this access or stem back to it, he's got 30 feet that makes it work to one house. It would have to be 38 to make it work for 2 homes. So there's a couple constraints that make that difficult in itself. If you wanted to just put I'm looking for a term, but anyway, assurance and the simple acreage, as Commissioner Bullock mentioned, we can also place restrictions on the number of homes that would go in there if he felt that was necessary.
And I'd agree with that. I would feel comfortable with that.
That sounds like that would accomplish the intent and purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So really, the main question in my mind is, are we comfortable with a flag lot on this property with one unit, with one structure on it? And if the answer to that is yes, then it doesn't matter if it's R120 or R114, in my mind.
You know, I have a concern when it comes to that, based on some of the reaction that we've had over the last couple of months from people generally in this area, that this was not what they signed up for. You know, well, we never intended to have condos here. That's not what we expected when we moved here. We've heard this repeatedly, over and over. Well, when we moved in, we never thought something like this would be here. And this is, in my mind, another example of, did the people around expect to suddenly have flag lots? I can't answer that. No one public response. But that has been kind of what we've heard lately, is when we moved in, this is what it was, and we expected it wouldn't change drastically, and does a flag lot change it drastically?
I think with the flag lot, it does alter it a bit, but the R120 is pretty in keeping with what we hear all the time. You know, everybody, if you get below the R120, they start thinking, you know, that's probably the biggest complaint, but the flag lot does alter it.
Yeah, and R120 is
The
2
R120,
houses away.
even with this and R114 with 2 homes, it's still essentially, if that's what happens. But
Yeah, I
you're
mean-
right, the flag lot, does it conform, does it fit?
Yeah, that to
There's some irregular shaped properties around there.
That's the thing.
already.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, and across-
Even erase the lines and just look at the aerial. If you just looked at the aerial and erased all the lines and all the colors and all the everything,
Yeah.
and you just put a home in the back there, do you look at that and as a gut reaction, say that doesn't fit. To me, the answer to that is no. It does fit.
Yeah.
And so the lines and the colors are irrelevant to me. Does a home back there change drastically the character of this neighborhood? And so if it's R114, great. I mean, those just become arbitrary to me. And, you know.
Well, you've already, most of these places already that have the agricultural zoning have barns and sheds and other things back, and they're accessing it right now, but driving across dirt roads or grass.
And across the street, there's some cul-de-sacs that they've got flag lots going on, and I just live around the corner. There's a flag lot near me. I think it fits. I'm really comfortable with it.
And this will be new construction, which will be different than some of the other buildings around here. And construction improves things, it's good, but some people may disagree with that. But I think it's not going to detract, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's, in this area, there's new and there's old, and I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's just how it is.
Fairly eclectic.
Plus, we're just recommending the city council ultimately makes the decision too, so.
Well, and I think that to that point, we're not really, our discussion isn't do we recommend R120 or R114, this is the proposal, this is what was published. I don't know that we necessarily can just say, well, let's just tell them to do R114 and come back. We'd have to do another public hearing, we'd have to notify everyone again, yea or nay, send a recommendation on for this.
And I would concur with that. If you'll vote on this, but you could also give direction that, you know, if you're on board with the flag lot and if another zone is needed to come back, we will do that.
So I guess maybe, I know we've already discussed this, but maybe just clarify for me. There's a question of whether this could even work as an R120. Is that right? So we would essentially say we're recommending approval for R120 pending verification that the lot square footage allows for that. If it doesn't, then it has to come back.
Well, I would say that the R120 zone is perfectly legal, but his ability to do anything with it, and so there's less of a moot point, I guess, with the zoning itself, but whether or not it serves with the applicant's desires is exactly right.
Which is, at the end of the day, what he's here for.
Well, so here's a question. So is it better for you as an applicant to come back with a different request?
Well, and I think to Commissioner Wood's point, and I'm cutting in on you, Mr. Nelson, so I apologize, but I think it's appropriate to make a recommendation on the request before you. So if you're okay with the R120, and again, we may find that there's
and then you
square
come back at
footage
that
needed,
point.
and he may be able to go forward under an R120. But then in your discussion tonight, that if we do find we've got to come back with the other district and designation, that you'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
comfortable with that.
So just let me, if I could make a closing comment then, that what I would prefer is I would prefer that you go ahead and give your recommendation to the city council on this zoning.
Okay.
In further investigation, if we find out that it won't work with an R120, then there is a possibility that the Nelsons then will readdress it and request for a different zone.
Okay.
I'm confident that we won't have to do that, but that's what we would do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just ask one quick question, Lyle? If he comes up 100 feet short, can he buy 100 feet from his neighbor? And would
Absolutely.
he have to come back? Is that section then included in this that's been rezoned, or?
It would be in the sense that our ordinances account for instances like that where we have parcels with more than one zoning designation on it. So where there's a majority of one district over a parcel, that takes rule essentially, and therefore those rules apply. If he had to get property from a next door neighbor, he wouldn't have to go through a street vacation process.
Yeah,
He wouldn't be
survey,
so
replat it, record it.
You
yeah.
could buy like 8 inches on that west property line.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. You wouldn't have to buy a whole lot. It'd be about this much, just the whole length of the property. There's your,
And to me, that just becomes
Yeah.
ludicrous.
yeah,
Process- the
it's
process
silly
to-
at that
to
point.
do
but-
that.
Yeah.
Well, especially when we owned it originally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at the plat that we paid for, was an
I,
right?
you're absolutely right. Yes, ma'am.
Smart man.
But, I mean, there's a long, long story about that, and we
Yeah.
don't need to get into it, but, you know, she is right. When we bought it, we were in the county. The property line was on the, where the fence line was. We bought an acre from that fence line back, and that was ours. And now, over the time, it's dwindled down and dwindled down. We didn't sell it, but we now have .91 acres.
Did you get paid for it, though?
No,
Well, that's interesting.
I do
You
want that.
should have got
I do
paid
want
for
that
it.
payback now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus interest.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. Well,
Yeah.
statute of limitations has probably run, but you should have been paid for that.
Well,
If they took it by eminent domain, they'd still pay fair market value.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway,
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, can we have a recommendation then?
you want me to recommend it?
We know your
I
recommendation.
know what your recommendation is, yes.
Well-
Oh, go ahead, Betty.
Betty?
You
Oh.
said most of it, so.
I think we all kind of did. So we're recommending it as is. And I mean, that's really it. We don't need to state any of the other issues that, based upon findings or whatever.
Correct.
So just as is. And then if it is compatible, then we'll come back and do the PRUD overlay so, all right. Well, with that, I will make a motion that we recommend approval. Let me get back to it. Okay. For the rezone of of 0.91 acres of property at 372 West Burton Lane from RA, the R120 Single Family Residential Zoning District for D. Reed Nelson.
And Beverly Nelson.
And Beverly Nelson.
I'll second.
Let me switch that. Let me put her name first.
Oh, okay, we have a recommendation.
And I'll second.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate the support from behind there. Now you need to sell them 8 inches of your land. So. Oh,
We were here waiting before they got here.
Right.
We own the property across the street.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
call to the public,
They're leaving.
which is walking out the door. So we'll end our call to the public. And are there other matters for the Planning Commission?
Just a few brief things. So I think I mentioned last time, we're starting our strategic planning process. Just to have on the radar, we're going to be doing, probably from our consultants with you or some of our staff, one-on-one interviews. So we've started already to schedule some of those. Just a heads up, that's what it's for. And something to think about. We're just kind of big picture, well ahead of time, so you're ready to answer questions. You know what, have to be regarding land use. If you've got concerns with taxing or policing or you name it, you know, that we're interested in hearing from some of those who've been involved with the city and probably have some great insight to share as part of that. And then a couple items of interest. So the Green family property, we've been working through a couple rezones on it. We had the Ogden Clinic here this past meeting with us. They have held a meeting with the neighborhood group. I was there with them Tuesday evening here in the building, so they've heard some concerns. Some of those, likely the 23rd of May, they hope to be back to address those things and speak with you about that. So just something to look forward to. And finally, I don't know if we want to discuss this much now, but you're welcome to take the time as a commission. We've wrapped up a couple of the items we've talked about recently, at least to the council, so they'll be addressed next time regarding some business licensing. They've got some subdivision ordinance. There are some things based on recent legislation that we'll be working on with staff to help bring us up to par with some of the changes that they've made with land use this year. But I was hoping maybe to take just a couple minutes to ask another item that you would like to tackle first. once we move past business licensing, if there's anything on your mind that you would like to see us work on. I'm sure if Wilf were here, he'd say our standards and our conditional use. But anyway, put you on the spot. If you don't have something now, you please email me and let me know, and we'd like to address the things that you're seeing as a commission and continue to work on our ordinances to make those things happen. So.
Okay.
One thing you will see coming from us coming up soon, and I'll send out an email to each one of you. One of the big changes that the state made this year, and they're not really a big change, but what they're pushing for is to deal with housing affordability in the state of Utah. SB, I'm pretty sure it was a Senate bill, 34, essentially requires that every city over 5,000 people, so it includes Kaysville, implement 3 specific strategies. They have like a pick list of 26 items that we could utilize to anyway help provide different housing options and theoretically more affordable housing options. Some of those things deal with density, accessory dwelling units. I forget them all, but like so there's 26, 28 or so of those.
He's just trying to act modest. He knows them all.
I could read them off if you'd like.
Well, I was going to ask you, so when I was in that most recent land use legislative update class training, they mentioned a list of cities. Are we on that list? Are we one of the cities that has to
So
deal with this? I wasn't sure.
currently, not every city in the state is required to have a moderate income housing plan.
Right.
We are supposed to have one, and we do. Currently, we're in compliance, but they have made some changes with that as well. So, but yeah, we're constantly trying to double check and make sure we're on par with what they're requiring us from the state. But there may be changes to that as well, and our decisions we make as we address our ordinances ought to be reflected from that policy or in that policy. And when we go through our general planning process, it would be kind of the easiest time to get some of the really big ones nipped at. And so we have to do at least 3. Perhaps we do all 26. Maybe we do 10. I don't know. That'll be something we decide ultimately as a community and with our council when they pass these items. But I believe as we're going through the strategic plan, perhaps fall, early next year, we'll be starting this general planning process, which will address that issue more directly. Be too late to make the changes, so we'll be a little bit burdened with get the ball rolling on picking some, and there's probably some low-hanging fruit that's not too drastic or difficult for us to work on. But
So what you're talking about is like suggesting new ordinances for like mixed use and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, it talks about mixed use could be one, density near transit hubs, which we don't necessarily really have one, but so these are statewide requirements. Things to preserve existing moderate income housing, reducing impact fees, implementing mortgage assistance programs. So there's a significant number of ways that the city could approach it. They may not all necessarily be changes to the way that although some of them might be, and that's where it'll come this route more directly with the Planning Commission.
Okay.
I had one question. I'm part of the Chamber's Board of Governors on the transportation, and I was at a meeting and they were talking about tax credits for gasoline use, and there were a lot of cities represented there. I wondered, because I think you have to update it every so many years to get full benefit of that.
Yeah, so the states essentially required that the communities such as Kaysville, large enough cities, have these moderate income housing plans. There hasn't been a lot of weight or teeth to enforce it or behind it, and so as Commissioner does is essentially say if you're not in compliance and you haven't implemented the appropriate action, then you may not be eligible for these transportation funds from the state.
Oh, they weren't talking about necessarily being eligible, just recouping what you're entitled to. That was more what I did. And they were going back through the cities quite fast. I was representing Kaysville, Freeport, and Davis County. So.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so it's just something to look into.
But yeah, that's all I've got. So if there's not specific discussion ready this evening, and again, putting you on the spot, if there's other things you'd like us to be working on, we're ramping up with some staffing, and ability to help. And I'll shoot out some emails that you can take a peek at these so as you're a little more informed as we meet next.
Are you planning on that for the next meeting then? You're assuming?
Yeah, we can get started. I don't know that I'll have a specific ordinance, but what I'll do is we'll get the list. Where we don't have that specific rezone that I know was a lengthy meeting last time with Clitic, there's likely time that we could spend to address that directly and begin discussion.
Okay. All right, anything else from anyone?
Oh,
Lyle?
I take my turn, sorry. Thank you for the second chance. Just a final thing, so those of you who it applies to are aware, and we have a few terms coming up this year. So there are 3 positions that will be potentially changed. You're welcome, every single one of the positions based on the city's most recent process for appointing planning commission. If you're interested in continuing, you do have to reapply. I think the mayor at the next meeting, if you didn't already, will be just reaffirming that process. But essentially through the month of May, they'll be taking in applications, June, do a couple of interviews, and have it selected before the July 1st turnover or term initiation. So again, if you're interested, make sure you apply. If you know others you think may be interested that you think would be good on the planning commission, you may encourage them to watch for that and make application. I believe right there, front and center, I think is.
And according to, I'm finishing my 3rd term, and according to bylaws, that's all you can do consecutively.
Oh, consecutively. Okay,
Yeah.
so over time you can.
So you'll be back in 3
You,
years?
you can be back.
Can we just kick him out for a week or
kick
two?
me out for a week or
Bring him
two.
back?
Been on suspension before, not just.
Yeah.
You could resign and then reapply.
And that,
Yeah,
at
there
least
you
that's
go.
that's
Yeah.
what I
That would work.
recall when we.
We can double check the
years ago we were
bylaws.
doing, but-
If you're looking for an out, then we'll just say yes. Either way, I'd be happy to confirm that. And
Confirm
double
that.
check
Weird
this
being
one.
a has
Bring it
been. But no, that was my understanding, and so that'd be great. So.
All right. On that then, we have a motion to dismiss, adjourn, depart, all those
Yes.
wonderful things.
You're even an hour early.
I'm an hour early.
I've